Reformed Church.
We believe right here at this church we believe in speaking in other tongues, but let's put that aside, right? Let's say you're not into that, right? Let's say I don't really believe in speaking in other tongues. I believe that was for the apostles, or I believe that was for whatever, or I just believe it's demonic, or whatever. Right? Okay, let me simplify it for you, because you have been taught wrong about speaking in other tongues. Let me just state this very quickly. Do you believe that God can speak in any language? I mean, like French. Can God speak French? You think God is able to reach people in France that are believers? Or do you think that he only speaks English or Hebrew or something, and he won't be able to speak to them? Do you believe he can speak French? And this is going somewhere, so just stay with me on it, because these are actually important questions to ask yourself, right? We know he can speak English, because I'm sure that, if you've been a believer for a long time, you've probably heard the Lord speak through another person, or even in your own heart in English, right? So God can speak English, right? And hopefully we acknowledge the fact that the God who knows everything can speak French too, right? Can he speak German? You think God can reach people in Germany that speak German? You think that he can speak different African dialects? You think God can speak Chinese? You think God can speak those languages? Do you think he's aware of that? Those are not silly questions. I'm being serious, and I'm not being sarcastic with you. I'm really asking you that question for you to answer that in your heart. Do you think God can speak those languages? Okay. You just said you believe in speaking in other tongues then. You believe it then. You've been taught that speaking in other tongues is like a personal prayer language. I'm sure you've heard that before. That's not true. The Bible, look it up in your Bible. It's not in the Bible. It's not a personal prayer language. The word tongue in the Bible, you ever heard the Bible say that, that every nation and every tongue will at one point or another say that Jesus is Lord? You ever heard that? Does that mean they're speaking in a personal prayer language? Every tongue? No, the word tongue is just an old English word for language, right? It just means other languages. That's all that means. So when you say speaking in and this is sort of my cue that someone has a wrong mentality about speaking in other tongues, is when they say speaking in tongues. Because in tongues, sort of, we take that to mean in a personal prayer language, where the Bible will more frequently say speaking in other tongues, because it means speaking in other languages. So as long as you believe that God can speak more than one language, that he's multilingual, you believe in speaking in other tongues. That's all that is. The Bible just says that we can speak with tongues of angels and of men. When you speak in other tongues, you're not always speaking in some heavenly language. When someone gets up here and is speaking in another tongue, you could be speaking French. I've spoken Hebrew before. I don't know Hebrew. And I looked up the word later on and realized I was speaking Hebrew. I've said things in Spanish before up here. It just depends. It could be a mix of things. I'm just all that I'm saying is, if you believe that God can speak in other tongues, and you believe that God lives in you, let me not use the word tongues. If you believe that God can speak other languages and God lives in you, and if you believe that God can speak through us, we hopefully, right, God can speak through us, because I don't know why you're here if you don't think God can speak through people, because you don't want to hear me, right? You don't want to hear my opinion, because what's my opinion worth to you? I hope you come here because you believe that God can speak through people, right? We don't do that perfectly here, right? You shouldn't put your hope or your trust in people and what they say, but God can certainly speak through people. You read a Bible, guess what? Guess how that came through? Through people. And guess what? It was written in a different language. It was written in a different language. And it was written in different dialects across the thousands of years that the Bible was written. God can speak in other languages, and if you believe that, and you believe that God can speak through you, you believe that God can speak in other languages through you then. That's not weird. That's not weird. Every Christian really does believe in speaking in other languages. They've just been taught wrong about what tongues means. So with all that said, as we go through the rest of the night, that's a gift of the Spirit to be able to just speak in other languages, just the same way it's a gift of the Spirit to be able to know something that God knows on the inside of you, to speak something that God is saying through you, called prophecy. Speaking in another language is what we would call speaking in other tongues, from a biblical terminology standpoint. That's what that means. So I think every Christian believes that God can speak in other tongues. And I just kind of want to clarify that for you, because you have been taught wrong about a lot of things. And speaking in other tongues or other languages is one of them. In fact, we'd probably be better off not even saying other tongues, because we don't use that term today. We would just say, do you believe in speaking in other languages? And obviously we wouldn't find that weird if someone went to college to take another language or learned it in high school. That's not demonic, right? So why is it weird if I get up here and I speak in a different language? If I learned it from a school, you wouldn't have a problem with it, but because I learned it from God, it's a problem? That's weird, right? Isn't that weird? I'm sure a lot of this have never occurred to you before, but that's all right, we're learning. But I think it's weird that we approve of it in a secular school, but we don't approve it sometimes when you hear another language in church. That's kind of funny. But anyway, I just want to throw that out at you because that is what that means. And so as we go forward, we believe that God's living on the inside of us. We believe God can speak other language, and we believe that God can interpret that language, and we believe that God can speak things through us, right? And also as we go, one more thing I just want to point out, as we go on with the rest of the night, the way you judge whether something is the gospel or not is by the content of what is being said. You ever heard that verse quoted, you shall know them by their fruits? You ever heard that quoted before? It's usually quoted about people's actions. If you actually read the context, it's not talking about people's actions, it's talking about people's words. That's right around that same, it's in the same chapter. Jesus, out of the abundance of your heart, your mouth speaks. Out of a good treasure of a man's heart, he brings out good words. And out of the evil treasure of a man's heart, he brings out evil words. And so when he says you shall know them by their fruit, that means you shall know them by their words. He's talking about how to detect a good teacher or a bad teacher. So if I get up here, you've seen things before where, I'll make a face or I'll move in a certain way or something like that. Push all that aside. Push all that aside and just listen to the words. You shall know me tonight by my words. You shall measure me tonight by my words. You shall measure this church by our words, right? Don't measure us by the way it appears. Measure us by our words as to whether we are preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ or not. And if the words are good, and if the words are teaching Jesus, then that's all that matters. It really is all that matters.
We hope you enjoyed this message from Reformed Church. If you have, please share this with someone else and help us get this unpopular message to the world. If you'd like to support Reformed Church, you can do so at reforminus.com/give. Also on our website, you can take advantage of our free messages, articles, and even full discipleship courses. Start reforming your mind now at reforminus.com.